chime of the bell beckons us into a sacred time. Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Houston, a congregation that welcomes you, no matter what you look like or who you love, and no matter how you practice spirituality. Because we know we need not think alike to love alike. We extend a heartfelt and inclusive invitation to join us in meaningful worship and in service to the world. You may be missing some of the friendly faces that usually greet you this morning. There's some of our folks are at U for the church retreat this weekend, so we wish them safe travels as they come back later today and hope they're having a great time. We greet all those who join us this morning, those in our sanctuary, all of our many online viewers, así como el creciente número de participantes bilingües que nos acompañan desde sus hogares. Today we welcome to our pulpit Ebony C. Peace. Ebony is a lay community minister whose ministries focus on workplace justice, liberal sexuality education, and leadership development. Many of our classes and workshops are through Sunstone Chapel, which you can read more about on the web. So welcome, Ebony. And now please join our guest song leader, Bob Miller, for our first hymn.
Our opening hymn is number 361 in the gray hymnal, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In. Please rise in body or in spirit and join me.
Thank you. Please be seated. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Don't be afraid of some change. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. We are surrounded by transition. We feel more warmth in the air and see and hear more birds there too. Evidence of growth and transformation is found in the imminent potential of seeds and buds. Let us gather this morning with warm hearts, hopeful spirits, and unafraid of change. Enter, rejoice, and come in.
Celebremos con nuestras
Now, if you will all say with me our congregational covenant found on your order of service. Love is the spirit of our congregation. Service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek truth in love, and to encourage one another. Thus do we covenant.
My name is Earl Dredge. I've been a member here at First Unitarian Universalist Church of Houston for 40 years. When Georgette and I first came to Houston, we visited 3 churches altogether, went one time apiece to the other 2, and been here ever since. The minister we had in Omaha when we left said she had worked with Bob Shively in Chicago. So she said, that's where you want to go. So we thought, okay, well, we'll check the other ones out, but this is the place we've stayed, and we're very, very happy to be here. We stayed through the troubles back about a dozen years or so ago. In fact, I was president of the board the second year we had the interim minister at that time. And to me, it was very important that we keep going. We lost a lot of people, but we were not going anywhere. We were going to stay here. This church, it has the values that we like. It matches our values almost exactly. We've both been very involved in different committees and so forth, and we feel that it's important to give not only the money. Money is very important. That's why this is a pledge drive. But we also like people to give their talents and their time to help the church grow and to really do a good job. I've always said through the many years that First Unitarian Universalist is a beacon of liberal religion in the city of Houston. And I think it maintains that. In fact, if anything, it's gotten even better. So we really want people to know how important the church is. So please, please, if you can make a real strong pledge, that is very important. Georgette and I have been longtime supporters, financial supporters of this church, and we try to do our best, even though we're on fixed income as senior citizens. But it's still important to make sure that we do the right by our church. Thank you.
I have said it before, and it remains true, that I have paid cover charges for the privilege of buying overpriced drinks in jazz clubs where the music was not that good. I think you will probably agree with, maybe not with the drinks, but you agree with how good that is. But this is the part of the service where the younger folk get to go and do some other activities besides what we're going to do here. And they're usually something really interesting and fun, so I'm often jealous that they get to go and do something cool. But before they leave, we always like to remind them that they are a very important part of this church, and we love you all very much. Please keep that in mind as you go out, and the adults are going to sing to you as you go. This is the time during the service when we pause for contemplation. This may be one of the only times during the week when we intentionally sit in silence, when we still our minds and our hearts and breath. This is a time that some call meditation and others name prayer. Breathe with me the breath of life. Breathe in for loving, for acceptance, and with a sense of calm. Breathe out the sorrow, the division, and the stress. Inhale as we share this interwoven, intricate web of affinity. Exhale as we feel one another's presence. Breathe with me as we gather to do the holy work of kinship and support. Open your mind, open your heart. God of many names and mystery beyond all our naming, we gather in reverence and gratitude for our lives, and even more, the resonance of our lives in connection with you and one another. We gather in reverence and gratitude for the beauty and truth we find in the world. We lean on that reciprocal connection with you and one another when we cry out in pain for our world. May those connections support us further as we work to end the suffering and wrongs that we see. This is not a solitary journey. May the love we have for ourselves and others be manifest in the love of our actions. May we be instruments of justice, equity, and compassion. A world of beauty and love is coming, because life and love are stronger than tyranny and fear. But we must pledge to shape it together. We pray in the names of all those known and unknown, present and absent, remembered and forgotten. We pray in the names of all helpers of humankind. Amen. As we pause now together to lift up that which sits heavy and light on our hearts, I take this opportunity to quote Senate Chaplain Barry Black. Lord, when babies die at a church school, it is time for us to move beyond thoughts and prayers. Lord, deliver our senators from the paralysis of analysis that waits for the miraculous. End quote. We recently observed the International Trans Day of Visibility. I pray that our politicians, locally and nationally, begin to see our trans siblings as valued human beings and not as political pawns in a hateful power game. And we mourn with longtime member John Naylor on the death of his father, Harlan Naylor Jr., who passed away this past week. His father also attended this church many years ago. We now turn to a practice inspired by African, indigenous, and pagan traditions. We say aloud or bring to mind those who we wish to be held by the loving embrace of this religious community. They are part of the great cloud of witness and memory, and we will, even if we do not know their names, hold them in our hearts. In this great cloud of witness and memory, amid this beloved community, we hear these names and hold them in our hearts. Let us remember the suffering and joy amid and among our community that we do not know. We pause in awe and wonder of the beauty, diversity, and mystery that is life. In the spirit of love, in the spirit of hope, and in the spirit of compassion, I invite each of you to enter into a time of silent prayer, meditation, or reflection.
Each week, our morning offering is shared with an organization that shares our Unitarian Universalist values and through which we may live out our principles in the world. Today, our shared offering will help to support the Citizens Environmental Coalition. Their mission is to foster dialogue, education, and collaboration on environmental issues in the Houston Gulf Coast region. Is Nancy Edwards here with us today, who can tell us a little bit more about this nonprofit? No, I will share a brief blurb. The Citizens Environmental Coalition works to connect Houston's environmental community through a diverse range of programs, resources, and events. Through CEC's work, opportunities are created to provide access to careers and advocacy opportunities that may not otherwise be available, to foster a sense of wonder and appreciation for our local natural resources, and to ensure that ongoing work is being done collaboratively and strategically. Those in our sanctuary will find the instructions for text giving in the order of service, and those watching the live stream will see the instructions on your screen. Our regular Sunday morning offering collection invites us to weave a tapestry of love in action. We ask you to give generously. An offering will now be gratefully received.
saying the offering dedication that can be found on the laminated pew card. To the work of this church, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives and these our offerings.
And now we'll hear a reading from the latest Article 2 Study Commission draft section on inspirations and inclusion. As Unitarian Universalists, we draw upon and are inspired by the full depth and breadth of sacred understandings as experienced by humanity. Grateful for the religious lineages we inherit and the pluralism which enriches our faith, we are called to ever deepen and expand our wisdom. Systems of power, privilege, and oppression have traditionally created barriers for persons and groups with particular identities, ages, abilities, and histories. We pledge to replace such barriers with ever-widening circles of solidarity and mutual respect. We strive to be an association of congregations that truly welcome all persons who share our values. We commit to structuring congregational and associational life in ways that empower and enhance everyone's participation.
Our second reading is a responsive reading, so I invite you to find the insert in your order of service. On one side will be some lyrics of a familiar song that we will sing later, and on the other is the responsive reading, and I will say the parts that are not in bold, and I invite you to say the parts that are bold when it comes time to say those. May we bless the work inherent in the review of our values. May we hold sacred this aspect of our theology which calls us to reconsider our past, listen to those in which we covenant with, and find shared meaning to serve as a beacon for our future. For the servant leaders overseeing this review and our transformation process, for the listeners who discern with love. We engage together and in good faith. We collectively transform with love. May we embody change as a spiritual practice. May we embody love. We all need water to survive, as we all need love to thrive. We share the flame. We choose love as the enduring force that holds us together. With open hearts and curious minds, may we receive the realities and blessings of change.
Our next hymn is found in the Teal Songbook, number 1029. It is a hymn that's probably not too familiar to most of us, so Chelsea's going to play it through one more time, and then we'll launch into it. Love knocks and waits for us to hear, to open and invite. Love longs to quiet every fear and seeks to set things right. Love offers life in spite of foes who threaten and condemn, embracing enemies of those
Amen. We have a long living tradition of expanding and opening our hearts. It's of no surprise that we as Unitarian Universalists are predisposed to change. Change is literally baked into the bylaws of the Unitarian Universalist Association. Did you know our principles and sources were not meant to be static? I knew we called ourselves the living tradition because we consider ourselves flexible, reasonable, open-minded, but I did not know that, and excuse me while I get a little technical here, that Article 15, Section C-15, 1, requires a periodic review of Article 2. Article 2 is a section of our UUA bylaws that contain our principles, sources, and purposes. This periodic review is mandated to take place not less than every 15 years. Our principles were first created in 1960. A review happened back in the mid-'80s, which added our 7 principles and 5 sources. The mid-'80s review was led by mostly women who advocated to replace sexist language with gender-neutral language. In 1995, Earth-centered traditions were added as a source. We haven't had any major changes since then, even though the study and review of our Article 2 continue to take place. This is important. Just because a review and proposed changes occur does not mean the proposal will pass. Case in point, 2006, a review began, and 2 years later, in 2008, draft revisions of our principles, sources, and purposes were proposed. A year later, at the 2009 General Assembly in Salt Lake City, Utah, delegates voted down the proposed changes. The vote was very close, with a 13-vote difference, 573 to 586. To be clear, right now in 2023, we are in the midst of such a review. Our forebears who crafted this rule of periodic review wanted to ensure our faith deliberately adapted to the future and that we remained without a permanent dogma. When these 15-year reviews start, it moves along in a 2-year process of deep discernment that includes input from individuals and eventual voting by delegates. These delegates vote twice, once for preliminary approval with a simple majority, and then a second vote that requires 2/3 vote over 2 consecutive General Assemblies. Our cosmic reality is that the universe is in motion, the stars, the planets, the galaxies, our Earth is in motion. For our faith to be in motion, for Unitarian Universalism to embrace the natural rhythm of the cosmos in which we are a part, is a beautiful truth. Continuous change and reevaluation are a part of our theology. We are not called the living tradition for nothing. We are open to new information. We have a culture of learning, a theology of applying what we've learned into our shared values. I'm passionate about this because in our case, change is good. Some of us have been talking about, voting on, or doing our best to live into the spirit of the 8th principle. This is about stretching ourselves to not just do justice work outside of our faith communities, but within them. I'm passionate about this because the current proposed changes include the heart of the 8th principle language. This is the inclusion many of us have been working hard towards. The proposed changes include a pledge to be inclusive, welcoming, and accountable for creating beloved community. And I invite those of you who may not be comfortable with the proposed changes to consider not the technical reason why these changes are being proposed, but what these proposed changes And this sacred process can teach us. Every 15 years or so, when we go through this ritual of change, our transformation, let's use this opportunity to remind ourselves of our UU theology of change. Remind us that we are meaning makers, meaning seekers, that this is not just in our congregations, but within our denomination as a whole. We practice what we preach. This is where we practice right relations, relational skills, listening to each other. This is where we also hold space for grief. Yes, grief. Our principles, sources, are emotionally charged because they are sacred. They give us direction and a shared understanding of what matters most. When something critical to the core of our faith changes, it inevitably changes us as well. Let's give ourselves grace. I hope that when the changes are said and done, that we celebrate the faithful process we engaged in. Not necessarily celebrating the changes per se, but celebrating our process. The right answer is not in the results of this review, whatever that may be. The right answer is in our process in which we covenant for our shared faith. So let's get started with a deep dive into what this new updated proposal says. A few moments ago, we heard a reading from this latest Article 2 draft proposal. The first part of the reading sought to clarify and reframe our shared understandings of what inspires UU faith. And I quote, "Grateful for the religious ancestries we inherit and the diversity which enriches our faith. We are called to ever deepen and expand our wisdom. As our understanding expands, we speak our truth. We cannot reach our goals without transformation." And the second part of this reading lifts our commitment to inclusion. It acknowledges the harm caused by unchecked systems of power, privilege, and oppression. It pledges to replace these barriers with solidarity and mutual respect. This language makes clear our goal of empowering each other to participate without undue oppressive obstacles. The proposal expresses that we are inspired by multiple sources of wisdom and experience, that we covenant and agree to replace systems that create barriers with solidarity that creates belonging. Our multifaceted inspirations and pledge of inclusion seem to set the groundwork for the next section of the proposal that continues with values and covenant. It's clear that the spirit of our principles is here, yet they are now called values, and they are rephrased for clarity. And this section includes 7 values: love, justice, generosity, transformation, pluralism, equity, and interdependence. They read as follows. Love. Love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love. Inseparable from one another, these shared values are interdependence. We honor the interdependent web of all existence. We covenant to cherish the earth and all beings by creating and nurturing relationships of care and respect. With humility and reverence, we acknowledge our place in the great web of life, and we work to repair harm and damaged relationships. Pluralism. We celebrate that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology. We covenant to learn from one another in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect. Justice. We work to be diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where all thrive. We covenant to dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression. We support the use of inclusive democratic processes to make decisions. Transformation. We adapt to the changing world. We covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically. Openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian and Universalist heritages, and complete and never perfect. Generosity. We cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope. We covenant to freely and compassionately share our faith, presence, and resources. Our generosity connects us to one another in relationships of interdependence and mutuality. Equity. We declare that every person has a right to flourish with inherent dignity and worthiness. We covenant to use our time, wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities. These are what our shared values may look like in the future. There are 3 changes that I believe are important to acknowledge. The first is that in this updated proposal, there are no numbered 7 principles. This can feel like a big change, and for some it is. Can we hold space for those who are experiencing grief? Can we remember that someone can grieve for what was lost while still being supportive of this proposal? May we remember that this space is not an either-or space. This is a process and ritual of many feelings, many conversations, discovery, reflection. The second is that in this proposal, the 8th principle is alive and well. Did you hear it? Did you feel it? It's weaved into the proposed value of justice. And I quote, "We covenant to dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression. We support the use of inclusive democratic processes to make decisions." The third change is the inclusion of the word love. This proposal finally lifts up love. The fact that we are just now including love is an example of where this proposal catches up to our lived experience as UUs. Despite holding up love in such high regard, it was never mentioned in any of our principles. It's time love gets its proper recognition and place as the, and I quote, enduring force that holds us together. All of this is to say that this mandated, spirit-led transformation is one of the most sacred, meaningful rituals our denomination engages in, and it has not been acknowledged with the deep reverence it deserves. So let's change that, starting with today. This is where our next steps come in. What do we do now as a congregation? What do we do now as an individual person of liberal, rational belief? So let's explore what our next steps could look like from the lens of spiritual practice, democracy, and rationality. Change is how we have chosen theologically to define our future. This is in deep contrast to some faith traditions which are deliberately static. It's not so much that we hold change itself as sacred, it's that our theological understanding is that we honor the interdependent web in which we exist. Our next steps should look like this. We listen to the joys and sorrows of our community. We repair bonds broken, covenants undone. This interdependent web is about many things, including relationships. As we become aware of our relational concerns, we take action to make things right. We change for the better. We consider compassionate processes that support not repeating mistakes. We revise what contributed to failures. We remove what causes pain. We clarify our shared meanings and reassess our priorities. In today's context, we embrace with an eye toward growing together in a meaningful way. We embrace change to increase our resilience and upholding covenants in which our relationships can thrive. Yes, we may fall short, and yes, we must keep trying. The relational interdependent web is our reason. Embracing change as a spiritual practice is our how. The when is now. The where is within the UUA, it's within our congregations, and within ourselves. The Reverend Kathleen Rowlands, author, UU minister for over 29 years, and accredited interim minister, who I had the honor of being mentored by during my seminary internship. She says this about our living tradition. Throughout history, we have moved to the rhythms of mystery and wonder, prophecy, wisdom, teachings from ancient and modern sources, and nature herself. We move. Not only do we move to the many wisdoms, to our many experiences, we move to the ethical rationality in our hearts in which we trust. We move to the scientific inquiry that says the outcome of our study, this Article 2 Commission study, will be better when we work together, take in various inputs, and discern in good faith with good data. Yes, good data. When we call on the spirit of John Lewis's guiding principle, good trouble, this means necessary trouble to enact and inspire meaningful change. I'd like to add, let's get into good trouble with good data. Good data, in our sense, is data that is democratically gathered, the facts and lived experience of truth tellers, where we name our grief while holding space for grace, holding space for the imperfection of our humanity. Change is often an uncomfortable, time-consuming process. We know this. In part because no transcendent power will save us from ourselves, we must step up, make it our business to understand the changes that may come to pass. Without our active participation in this process, there can be no good data gathered. This is not a time to sit back and watch. This is a time to dialogue with each other. Reach out to the denominational affairs representative in your community if they haven't already connected with you yet. Ensure that you're updated on when and how to participate in this process. This is a time to engage with the Article 2 study resources available on the UUA website. Use them as a source of study for small group ministries. This is a time to step out of regularly scheduled plans and add this topic to your schedule. This is the time to think about how you may encourage your delegates to vote. For the past few months, and still continuing, UUs all over have offered their voices so that the Article 2 Commission has good data to work in an inclusive way that captured many voices. Will your delegates vote for these changes? Changes which include love and a pledge toward anti-oppression and justice. For the outcome to have the best result, all need to be a part of the process that gets us there. Let me illustrate this by saying that it's impossible to deepen without change. This is why we regularly evaluate our principles, purposes, and sources. Are they doing the job we need them to do? Do they reflect who we wish to be? Jewish writer Avram Davis observed, and I quote, "We are what we practice," end quote. So let's practice change. Let's practice acknowledging this every 15-year ritual with reverence and honor. Let's practice, as my favorite philosopher, Bruce Lee, says, I'm a millennial, being like water. Unitarian Universalism is a fluid faith. I further call on the wisdom of Bruce Lee as he reminds us, be like water, making its way through cracks. If nothing within you stays rigid, outward things will disclose themselves. Empty your mind, be formless, shapeless like water. Now, water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend. Some religions perceive being fluid and open to change as an invitation to crash, to lose power. We are so beautifully different. We choose our way forward. We create our future. We choose to flow and be fluid. We choose to perceive open-mindedness as a virtue. It is unethical to remain unchanged when good data comes, when our circumstances change. When family grows and a baby needs a seat at the table, we use our resources to get a chair that's comfortable and safe. If an adult now uses a wheelchair, in order to include them at the table, we must first remove the old chair to make space for them. When someone in our beloved community says our current principles don't do enough to keep them from harm, we must not only listen, but change. Change is a critical part of our spiritual growth and evolution as a faith community. We know not changing is easier. There is safety for some in the status quo. For others, the status quo is not so safe. It's harmful, oppressive. However, we are a people that journey together, not on the easiest path, but on the path that calls to the best of ourselves. Jesus could have taken the easy path, but he resisted. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. could have taken the easy path, but he had a dream. 6-year-old Ruby Bridges could have stayed at a school for Black children, but she integrated. Sophia Lyons-Fawes, Unitarian, theologian, educator, and author, broke norms with her innovative contributions to our faith because she knew what worked in the past would not serve us into the future. This is the path of love. When our principles transform, so do we. May we be true to who we say we are. When the status quo no longer serves us, may we choose to evolve, to lean into change as a spiritual practice. A fluid faith, like water, We choose change. We choose love. May it be so.
Our closing hymn is Turn, Turn, Turn by Pete Seeger. In your order of service, you'll find that insert and the lyrics, and please sing along. Please rise in body or in spirit.
If you will now say with me the words on the laminated card that we say when we extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
The work of our faith is love. We are called to bless the world with our resilience and generosity. Let us rejoice in the promise of our best selves. May we be courageous and love fiercely. Amen.
Thank you so much for watching our service today. We're glad you're part of our online community, where we welcome people who are diverse in faith, ethnicity, history, as well as gender identity and sexual orientation. There are many different ways you can get involved in our community. One you can do right now is by clicking like below or subscribing to our channel. If you're interested in joining our congregation, please email us at membership@firstuuhouston.org. Thanks so much for joining us.